Commissioner Power Rankings. And on my personal Twitter account, which is at whoisRyanMCC on Twitter, you can find me there. I jokingly did a power rankings for commissioners, and I ranked the commissioners from 1 to 545. Well, kind of. But I was kind of giving my feelings about how every commissioner has gone into this COVID situation, how they've handled it, and how they've been treating their players, how they've been communicating with their players, keeping them up to date on everything. So I'll go ahead and give you my power rankings for commissioners. I might do this once a month just to keep track and keep the topic flowing, keep the conversation going. So I'm going to give you my number one in the commissioner power rankings. It's Gary Bettman of the NHL. You're thinking to yourself, why would you pick Gary Bettman, of all people, as your number one in the commissioner power rankings? I'll give you some reasons why. When the NHL shut down the season, there wasn't a lot of certainty that it would return. Now, he had been keeping in touch with the NHLPA on what to do in terms of how to reopen the season, how they're reopen the season, what they're going to do if they're going to have the Stanley Cup playoffs, what kind of format they would have, when they would come back. And I think in late April, they announced the NHL, and he did a Zoom call with the fans to say, hey, we're going to come back in early August. We're going to restart the Stanley Cup as of today. We're going to end the season, standings as it is. We're going to take 24 out of the 31 teams, and we're going to create a Stanley Cup tournament with 24 teams. We're going to have a play-in round, and the top 4 teams for each conference will have a first round bye, and we'll have play-in games, best out of 5, at 2 hub cities. And what they did was that they rightly did was do phases. So phase 1 was going to be the testing. Phase 2 was going to be practice. Phase 3 was to find the hub cities, and then phase 4 and start practice, do full practice, and start. And phase 4 was going to be have a couple exhibition games, and then start the playoffs. So tomorrow is going to be hockey all day long. It's pretty cool. And Bettman has been probably the best out of the 4 or 5 major sports that have been handling this COVID situation well. And on top, the cherry on top of this whole thing of the NHL season coming back is that the CBA got extended 6 more seasons. So the last 2 times that there have been CBA negotiations, the season got canceled in 2004, 2005, and we had a shortened season in 2011, 2012. And we also had the 1994-95 shortened season as well. We can't leave that out. And Gary Bettman's been commissioner for all 3 of those scenarios. But they figure with the weird timing they had with the season being on hold, he and Donald Fear of the NHLPA and some player representatives said, let's get together, let's extend this thing out another couple of years, and we'll meet at the table again in 2027. And I thought that was a brilliant strategy because it ensures that we have hockey labor peace for another 6 years. B, NHL is going to be representing the Olympics again. And C, there's room to negotiate again before the new CBA ends. So right now, Gary Bettman is number 1 in the commissioner top power rankings. I'd never thought I'd see the day that I would have Gary Bettman as the number 1 seed, the number 1 in the commissioner power rankings. But he's done a superb job. There have really been no setbacks in terms of getting players up to speed. I mean, yeah, the Tampa Bay Lightning had those 6 players test positive, but that was in phase 2 when they were having open practices, and they're practicing in Florida, which up until I think they're still spiking a little bit with COVID cases, but they're the only ones who have really had significant problems with COVID testing because those 6 players testing positive. But everybody's gotten healthy. They're going to do active testing every day. And from what I understand, they're going to have in the hub cities, they're going to have hotels set, one team per floor and they have their own private chefs. They have their own meeting rooms to meet and talk over strategy and for players to live in their quarters, in their hotel rooms. So for a few months, it's going to be like hockey camp. It's going to be like hockey camp or any kind of sports camp where you stay in a dorm with your best bud on your team and you play games every couple days to go to the next round and keep your skills sharp. And from what I understand, they're going to restart the season. They're going to start the 2020-2021 season in December, because I know that the AHL announced they're going to restart their league around December 4th. So they're going to start bringing in the new season in. After the season ends in October, they're going to regroup in November, get training camp started, and then right back at it. So congratulations, Gary Bettman. You are number 1 in the Commissioner Power Rankings. Number 2 is going to surprise a lot of people, and I'll tell you why. Don Garber, Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer just got their season started when COVID came to town. So I think every team played at least 2 games before the season shut down. And they shut it down for a couple months. They got things going again. And what they did was that they said, okay, we can't extend out the season if we restart again. And we can't do it from everyone's home stadium. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Orlando. We're going to do a tournament. And we're going to determine like a World Cup style tournament to see who advances to the next round. And we'll crown our MLS Cup winner in September, which I thought was kind of a stroke of genius. And so far, there have been 0 positive tests for COVID. They test the players every day when they come to the practice field, when they go to start games. They test them. They take temperatures at the door before they enter the stadium. And Garber put this thing together with the Players Association, and he's done a pretty spectacular job with keeping things together. Now, a couple of teams did have to drop out. Dallas had to drop out, and Nashville SC, who this was their inaugural season. This was supposed to be their inaugural season. I remember watching the game back in March, their inaugural game when they played at Atlanta United, and they had a bunch of positive tests on their team. Dallas had, I think, 5 players and 3 training staff come down with COVID. That's when Texas's levels were spiking with COVID. So they both had to drop out of the tournament. But the rest of the teams, they carried on. They kept practicing. They kept doing their testing, make sure they take every step, they make sure they do every safety measure to get things right for when they do this tournament. They do it right, have players wear masks. If they're substitute players, they wear masks on the sideline. Everybody gets their own individual water bottle when they get water breaks, because it's in Orlando, and obviously it's hot and humid in the summertime in Orlando. So during day games, you get dehydrated pretty quick. So that tournament's going on full strong right now. I think the knockout stage begins either next week or the week after, and we'll crown our champion sometime next month. So good on Don Garber, good on MLS for keeping things going with their play-in tournament and with the opportunity for them to crown a champion this year. 3, M Silver NBA. Now the NBA kind of got things. How could I say this? They were kind of the ones who stopped sports altogether back in February, March, when Rudy Gobert tested positive for COVID. And all hell kind of broke loose after that. They stopped the season, made sure Gobert got better, and I forgot there was one player who also contracted COVID. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they made sure that the players got better. They got together with the NBA Players Association. Everybody got together where they wanted to keep practicing. They wanted to keep their skills sharp. And like the NHL, they decided, okay, we're going to do a bubble in Orlando at Walt Disney World. There's nobody going to Walt Disney World right now, so might as well just kick things off and get things going again with a bubble. We're going to end our season. We're going to do a 22 team. We're going to do 22 teams, bring them in. They brought in Zion Williamson, which is, and the New Orleans Pelicans, which is kind of sketchy. They brought 13 teams from the West and 9 teams from the East to play a couple of games and then have their playoffs. So we're going to have the 8 teams from each conference, and they're going to play. But he's done an okay. Adam Silver's done a pretty okay job with trying to get things settled with the tournament style, with the 22 teams, get them playing 8 games to see who advances to the playoffs. And again, we're going to determine a champion this year. So it's a little shocking that Adam Silver had the dubious case of having to cancel, be the league that first canceled its season because one player came down with the coronavirus, and that's when the pandemic kind of started. So they had the dubious distinction of having to cancel their season or postpone their season first, and then kind of the snowball effect happened after that. So right now, Adam Silver is number 3 in the commissioner power rankings with his job at the NBA. Number 4, Roger Goodell, NFL. He could. Now, NFL season's kind of, I won't say it's in limbo. I hope there's an NFL season this year, A. B, I hope they're taking measures with the NFLPA to ensure that nobody gets ill. There have been a few players who have opted out. They've given the option for players with with the Players Association, if they want to hold out, if they want to opt out for the year, they're more than welcome to. They got $150,000 if they're low risk, $350,000 if they're high risk. I know a few notable players have kind of said I'm not going to play this year. Laurent Tardif from Kansas City, he's opting out. 6 players from the Patriots are opting out, although I'm kind of suspicious that Belichick is sort of has something to do with that. But a couple of players are opting out, and that's fine. You know, it's their right to. They're still getting paid. They're getting $150,000 regardless, kind of a base pay thing. But there's no preseason games, which is kind of a blessing in disguise. Because who goes to preseason games? Honestly, I mean, who goes to NFL preseason games other than PSL holders? But it kind of shorthands newer coaches. I know Joe Judge from New York Giants is his first year as head coach. He's going to have kind of a tough time getting his coaching staff established with the new players, with his players, with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. The Bengals head coach, he's going to have a tough time. Not Bengals head coach, but a lot of the newer head coaches are going to have a tough time establishing their systems and getting a good idea of how to judge talent and evaluate who gets cut, who goes in the practice squad. There's 90 players to pare down the roster to 53 by September 10th. So that's when the season's supposed to begin, on Thursday night, September 10th. So, but Goodell has done an okay job with that. I thought he was doing pretty good with the draft. He did a pretty good job with the draft. But there was that incident where he had that auction going on for to watch in his man cave where he broadcasted the draft when he made the announcements for the first couple of rounds. And Portnoy from Barstool Sports won the auction, of course, and it became a PR nightmare for the NFL because they put in a stipulation that you couldn't get you couldn't be on a certain list with the NFL, which is kind of a jerk move. Because he won the auction fair and square. He bid the most money. That money goes to charity. Why wouldn't you want to take his money? I understand the NFL's relationship with Barstool Sports, particularly Portnoy, is tenuous at best. But I thought that was kind of a jerk move, a really bad PR move to say, listen, we know you won the auction. It's going to go to charity, but you violated some rules that we didn't specify at first. So therefore, you're not the winner. So right now, Roger Goodell sits in fourth, and last and very least in the Commissioner Power Rankings is Rob Manfred for Major League Baseball. And ever since the pandemic came along and who cut short spring training, he had the tiff with Tony Clark of the Major League of the Players Association, trying to figure out when to restart the season, when to reboot the season, what kind of a schedule they would have, what kind of if they were going to travel anywhere, if they were going to do a bubble season, and he couldn't come to agreement with the Players Association, and players were opting out. They said, "This is not worth it. It's not worth my health to do a 60-game season at a reduced rate, mind you, a reduced rate of pay." And now the situation with 17 players and coaches from the Marlins testing positive because they decided to allegedly go out to a strip club after an exhibition game in Atlanta, instead of making rules for the players to say, look, you play your game, you go back to your hotel room. Now, I will give the option to clean up there or not, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to travel to your hotel room in the city you're going to. You're going to stay there. We will provide you the meals from the hotel, like the NHL did, like the NHL is doing. They're hiring private chefs for each individual team in the hotels in the hub cities they're in Edmonton and Toronto. They didn't do that. They didn't establish any kind of, as far as I know, they didn't establish any kind of guideline for players to go by. So rather than going to the game, then going back to their hotel rooms, they're going out and having drinks somewhere in bars in Atlanta, which is one of the places that kind of had a spike prior to the season starting. So now 17 players and coaches with the Marlins have COVID. Today, it was announced that the Cardinals game tonight was postponed because of two players contracting COVID, and also the Philadelphia Phillies had to postpone a couple of their games with the Yankees because they played the Marlins the game before, and they had all those players tested positive for COVID, and they had pretty much wipe and steam the visiting locker room 17 times till Sunday because those players tested positive for COVID with the Marlins, and they're in the visitors' locker room. So they had a bunch of games postponed. St. Louis is going to have a couple of games postponed. It's a mess. And I think after this whole season ends, if the season has to get canceled, or they play through the season with duct tape together, with teams duct taped together, basically, I think the owners should sit down and talk to Rob Manfred and ask him to step down, because he just hasn't been doing a good job with this whole situation between coming up with a schedule, asking the players to take a pay cut, and now this whole mess with COVID, with players and coaches testing positive for COVID. So right now, Rob Manfred is in the bottom of my commissioner power rankings, and I want to hear from you. From everybody's watching, what do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Should I have certain commissioners higher? Should I have them lower? I want to hear from you. So if you're watching out there, just give me your top five. Just give me your 5 or 4 or how many how many in the power rankings you have for commissioner power rankings. All right.